Thank you. Welcome, everyone. So this is just a work session. We won't be taking any formal action this evening. So the first item on the agenda is public comments. So this would be the time to come forth and make a public comment, preferably of something that's not on the agenda, but either way, this would be the time. If you're interested in doing that, just step forward and give us your name and where you reside. Also, Carmen Matthews is virtual, and Drew Farmer will not be attending. He's attending his niece's birthday, which is important. I'm glad he's there. So anyway, any public comments? No public comments? Okay, next item is we'll review the upcoming City Council and Urban Renewal Board action items. And the first one is multi-unit property tax exemption program. And let me get to the page. And who's handling this, Roger?
I'm going to start out with it.
Okay.
But there's a tag team going here for this one. You know, Coos Bay, like most communities across this state and across the nation, are facing a housing shortage. It was interesting, I read last week that researchers at Freddie Mac estimated the current shortage across the United States is close to 3.8 million, which is up from the 2018 estimate of 2.5 million. We're, I would say, blessed. We have more housing going on now than ever, at least in my memory. And while a number of houses have been built, and there's a number are currently under construction, and there are still yet others in the planning and permitting phases, there's still a vast need out there that's unmet. Mostly what we're seeing, though, is single-family homes being developed. Very few multi-family units. You'll recall that we did have a couple of recent multi-family units built. One you incentivized through providing the property, and the other developer just said, I like that idea, and so he built one. But other than that, we haven't seen any. Many communities, or a number of communities, are using a new strategy, at least new to them, but is codified in statutes, called the Multi-Unit Property Tax Exemption Program, where it provides exemptions up to 10 years for approved projects of 3 units or better. Tonight, we have the pleasure of having Stephanie Hadley, who is the Regional Housing Coordinator, and she'll be providing the council an overview on that program.
The multi-unit program tax exemption, otherwise known as MUPTE, program is a state-enabled housing incentive program that allows cities across Oregon to exempt property taxes on residential improvements of approved multi-unit properties for up to 10 years. Although the state of Oregon enables this program, each municipality has the opportunity to shape the program to meet its own goals by controlling program requirements, criteria, and program cap. ORS 307.606 provides that the tax exemption can only apply to a property's full tax assessment if the program is supported by the city's partner and taxing districts, such that the program achieves support from taxing districts making up 51% or more of the total combined rate of taxation levied on the property, which is tax exempt. Minimal incentive is city and X alone, or the greater incentive would involve getting buy-in from the overlapping taxing districts. Roger touched on this a little bit, but in 2020, the city of Coos Bay completed a housing needs analysis that showed overall 604 new rental units in ownership. Single-family units are needed by 2040 to
That housing needs analysis revealed that for current renters, the greatest demand is for units for the lower and middle income at the affordable renter range. Really, rental demand's never been greater than what we're seeing today, and vastly exceeds supply. The program indicated that residents most likely need to spend greater than 30% of their income on housing and do not have adequate affordable options. We've seen it's not only the market that we have today, or the housing we have today, but it's the market and the marketing conditions that are causing this problem. Changes in rental rules have impacted how some owners want to deal. Do they want to have rental units, or do they want to change and go? For some, it is short-term vacation rentals, but for vastly others, they're just getting out of the rental market and they're selling the houses. And so that's changing the mix, and that's limiting the supply that's there. And in my mind, that's what's causing the demand and price to go up.
Roger, just a question on that. Do we have, and Stephanie, maybe you might have some information as well. Do we know if the homes that are being sold are being purchased by people coming into the area? For example, I have 2 homes, obviously one on each side. One of the homes just sold for an exorbitant price, quite honestly, for what they were offering. And those were people moving in from the area. Also know of another property, single-family dwelling, where a person moved in from Montana. These were people that bought sight unseen. Just think that Coos Bay is a great place to live, and this is where they want to come, and they want to retire. So is there anybody looking and studying to see what's happening? I think that that's also impacting the market because they have money.
I don't know if anybody's studying that, but I would venture to say that the people that want to move here because it's a great place are correct.
Yes.
But that is it. I'm sure that is, and you're seeing the shifting landscape of from this pandemic that people have learned that they don't have to live in the same place they work. With all the teleworking now, there are a lot of changes, and the pandemic also caused a lot of early retirements, and people are looking for quality of life. So I'm sure that we're having a lot more people moving in. And I assume that the housing needs analysis really doesn't scratch the surface as to what the real need's going to be.
When we were looking at the short-term vacation rentals, I did contact a couple of realtors, and they both noted that 9 out of 10 calls that they're receiving are from people out of the area.
Roger,
Pretty significant.
sorry, Sarah. You might be getting to this, but I know on one of the units that was built, building costs went up, and so a complex that we had hoped would be affordable was priced in such a way that not a lot of people could actually rent it. And so my question is, with doing something like this, can we also talk about some sort of rent control?
Well, you certainly can, and I did, and it's actually coming up in a slide or two, but I can tell you that that greatly impacts your ability to manage a project.
Okay.
And it does require you to hire extra people to actually manage it, because you can't just manage it for 1 year. You have to manage it, and you have to evaluate it and audit it for the whole 10 years.
Okay.
And so it actually takes quite a bit of extra work.
And I think it might also, it wouldn't detract the developers, because I think we ran into this with Timber Cove on some restrictions on housing or cost, and he basically said if you want to subsidize it, otherwise I can't afford to build it, and because you can't control the cost. So I mean, I think that there's some benefit to it, and the 9-plex is absolutely correct. I talked to the developer, but he, even though it's not an affordable amount, he was able to rent to some of the medical units, the medical people that are coming to the area, so it still fills a need. Might not be filling the need that we need to fill, but it does still take some of the
Fills
housing
one of them.
relief off. But, so you mentioned this is 51% of the supporting taxing districts have to buy into this. So how do we get there? Is the county going to support, is that what we're talking about, or?
Well, I think that's one of them, but, you know, the reality is we just went through this.
With
we
the,
went
so
through
the
this-
school basically makes it.
That's correct. When we were looking at, it was the Empire Urban Renewal Expansion.
Right.
We went through this very same program, and 51% required us to get not only the city's approval, but the school districts, ESDs, and the counties. And that actually made up the 51%. I would argue that this is a very worthwhile incentive. Let's just say that you approve it for this, just the city only, or we go for the whole 9 yards. The reality, if no one ever takes advantage of it, you're not out anything. But if we don't have this program and no one ever builds, you're still out housing, and you're still not getting any increased property taxes.
No, I think, I support it. I'm not sure how the rest of the council feels. I think it's great. I just want to know how we get to the 51%. So do we pursue going to the schools and asking them to accept this and get to the 51%? I mean, that's what I think the agenda, or the idea is to try to accomplish that. So,
Yeah.
no, I support it. I think it's great. I've talked to a few developers, and they are very interested in doing something like this, that it would cause them to build, I think. Now, the other thing is making sure that we have the availability of the property, and I'm not sure where we're at on that. But anyway, we need to have this as a tool, I guess, either way.
Well, and if you think that and we can go to the next slide, if you think we have a problem now, it'll only get worse if the ports container project goes through, if they develop new businesses at the GP site, or even if you just consider the new retail establishments that are going along 101.
Yep.
Everybody needs workers. And not only is there a housing shortage, but if you talk to business owners, it's very difficult to find employees right now. And part of that issue is they can bring people in, but if there's no place to live, people won't stay here.
And I think if we can create development for these multifamily facilities, then if we can get enough of them, and then I think it will start bringing the rent down, because there'll be more availability. It just, you know, I definitely believe it. Right now, it's so tight, the costs are so tight, it drives the market up.
Yeah, but Mr. Mayor, I mean, I think the reality is it's gonna take a while to
Yep.
get to that place,
It will.
so maybe it's not rent control, but can we spell out that in that multi-use, facility, can we make sure that, I'm making this up, 3 out of the 10 are low income? And we saw this when we went to, League of Oregon Cities, convention a number of years ago. So at least we're taking care of all the citizens, and the citizens, quite honestly, who have the most need.
Yeah, I think there's a number of different ways to get there, to be honest with you. I'm not sure that if you require that certain numbers of these be low income, they're going to supplement that by either charging more to the other 7. Or is there a better way of doing it to look at and pursuing some low-income housing projects, which there is another one that we're not at liberty to talk about, that's for another parcel of land that's a few acres, that another organization is pursuing, and that's in addition to the Inglewood school site. I think that's where those will have to come, and then how do we incentivize places like the Coos Curry Housing Authority to build more units and get those moving?
Thank you, Roger.
I think, and that's kind of what I heard at the League of Oregon Cities the last time we were able to attend in person, is that maybe not necessarily, 80% of a particular development is regular
Right.
versus low income, but that development, that the developer is doing maybe has different projects, and a percentage of this entire project is all low income.
Right.
This is moderate, or whatever they
But-
so choose.
Yeah, and I think if the council has consensus at the end that they want to move forward and explore options, those are all options that could come back and be discussed, and the reality is, it will be the council that makes up the rules on this, but remember, we'll have to sell those same rules to those overlapping taxing districts. But there's still options to craft what you want if this is something you want to pursue. I will share that I've done a little bit of investigation. I do know, like I said, the city of Salem, Cottage Grove, and Florence, as well as the city of Eugene have this program, and I think there's others. I contacted Cottage Grove's city manager and talked to him. They enacted theirs in 2019. He shared with me prior to 2019, they hadn't had a multi-unit development in 20 years. And since 2019, they have realized 120 units already, and they have more in the planning and permitting phases right now. They chose not to go with the Eugene model that was very complex, and I believe had some rent control requirements in it. He said it would actually take him 2 extra people to manage it. And that was too difficult for them because there's no way, with no additional revenues coming in, there's no way to fund those 2 extra people. So he chose not to. He believed that they needed housing across the spectrum, and the fact that additional housing helped solve the supply and demand issue that was causing costs to go up. Florence just recently implemented theirs. They chose to go to the model where they went to all the taxing districts and got buy-in. They shared with me that those taxing districts are facing the same problems that other businesses are facing. They can't get employees because they can't attract and retain people because of the lack of housing. So they had buy-in. And even though they were foregoing taxes for 10 years, they knew that they were still getting the existing tax on what was on the undeveloped property. And then in 10 years, not only would they have housing, but then they would have taxing revenue coming in from that point forward. So it's an investment in the future.
Thank you. That's the question that I had. Were they using the full 10 years? Because, I mean, even some of the stuff that we looked at on the community enhancement plan and things like that, when we were talking about manufacturing development, you know, it was 5 years, and then for additional, we had to go through a process.
Mm-hmm.
So, but they're going the full 10 years to encourage the development, and is that because it pencils out better?
Well, no, I think that's what Oregon Revised Statute allows, up to 10 years. It doesn't allow you to go beyond 10 years. And I believe the program had to start within another 10 years. I mean, till 2032, I believe. You have that much time to implement. I believe Salem's had theirs going much longer than that, but Salem chose a very small geographic area to allow this program to be happening, and I think it's in the core area of downtown, so they were looking for something different. I think they were actually looking for infill and then maybe some redevelopment of unused places. Cottage Grove and, well, Eugene and Florence all chose a little different model. Theirs is tied to one of the things is their transit district. Everything, if you're going to be able to apply, your project has to be within a quarter mile of an established route. So, and I think we'll have a slide coming up later that shows Florence's. It's a little different for us. We applied that model and looked at a map. The reality is that leaves east side totally out, and the majorities of South Empire and North Empire out, because the transit districts on the main roads. Although we have a different environment here. Link Transit District goes quite a few places. CCAT does not, but CCAT has a different model. CCAT not only has their fixed routes, but they have their dial-a-ride model, so they can go anywhere in the city. So, you know, if we were to go down this road, I would probably suggest that we look at citywide. If we want to get the biggest bang for the buck, we got to go to those areas that are undeveloped.
And I know that Stephanie has more to present, but would this be something that we could apply to upper floor development? I mean, we have a lot of upper floors that are not developed, and we see what the Buggy Bank building was able to do with that developer.
We'd have to investigate that, and with a nod to move forward, we could look at that. Right now it says new construction, although I think I saw in Salem's it's redevelopment.
Okay.
So it has to create new value. In addition to not only being so close to transit routes, they had a menu of options that they had to choose from that, I think it was 3 things that had to be to public benefits and might be designed. There was a number of different options. I think Cottage Groves and Florence's are pretty similar. And those are things we could look at and bring you a menu of different options. And then I think we have the map of Florence one. Might be a couple away because I kept on going. Yeah, another one. It's hard to see, but the general Florence is pretty well covered, and if I brought you ours, you would see how limited ours is. So we'd have to go with the bottle, wherever CCAT could go. And then
So one of the things I wanted to touch on in addition to the other examples in other cities is our relationship that we are currently building with Northwest Housing Alternatives. So we inquired with them of what this would do for their affordable housing development projects. Obviously, Inglewood is underway, but we also are in conversations with 2 other projects with them right now. So this would be huge. And as we look at developing an affordable housing toolkit, this would be one of the tools within that kit. It just would be the first one that we would be embarking on collectively. So our contact was Marie, his quote here, providing tax statement to affordable housing does so much more than just incentivizing homes in a local community through reducing ongoing operating costs. Tax abatement is a critical tool in an affordable housing developer's toolbox to reduce tenant rents, maximize the potential of private lending to the project, and achieve strong, stabilized, and well-operating properties in the critical first years of operation. Lower tenant rents means more spending cash directly into tenant hands, and as most income for tenants goes to pay for basic needs, there is more money that can be spent in a local community. So this would have a larger effect. And they provided a little bit more information for us. A 10-year tax exemption is a great incentive to market-rate housing development. However, affordable housing finance through the low-income housing tax credit program, which the vast majority of affordable housing is, includes some critical timelines to be of the highest benefit. LIHTC affordable housing involves a third-party private investment with a 10-year compliance period as mandated by the IRS. Providing tax abatement for LIHTC housing, which aligns with this 10-year period, critically incentivizes affordable housing development through allowing it to not be a required cost in the project underwriting, which Roger touched on. So when we look at these projects, we're looking at rentals, probably not people that are buying homes right away, so it is going to fill a need for us right now. Sure.
So if we want to accelerate development, we just need to look at incentives to increase this area of housing. Like I mentioned, multi-units, almost all multi-units are rentals, and this is an area of great need for us right now. During the last housing needs analysis, rentals was not called out, but that was because that housing need analysis was based on the fact that we had Timber Cove coming as a manufactured home park, and they thought that would fill some of the need. That's changed, so I think you will be looking at multi-units to help fill that rental need. So with the council's permission or consensus, we'd like to begin the process of providing information or gathering information or options for your consideration. I think as we move forward, we really kind of need to know which option to pursue. I think it's not that big a task for us to go out and to do the dog and pony show and sell this to the overlapping taxing districts. I think that's the bang for the buck. Currently, if we just did it for us, all we're really saving our new developers is $6.36 per assessed $1,000 on their new development. If we do it for the entire taxing district, and I don't have the exact number, but it could go up to as high as probably about $14 per 1,000. So that's a big
Are you talking
incentive.
about the county, Roger, or are you just talking about the school district?
No, we would ask all, basically you need 51% of the aggregate taxing value. So we would look at the biggest providers, and that's going to be the county and the Coos Bay School District and ESD, and along with us. That will get us the 51%.
Okay.
And that's based off the model we just went through. And then if we get their concurrence, then it allows us to do it across the board, which would include 4-H, the airport, SWAC, did I say the port? Port,
Yes.
and the library service district. There might be a couple other ones in there.
Okay.
Does this have any kind of a negative impact at all on, in urban renewal areas where there's property that's available for development?
Well, we would be foregoing urban renewal as well. Not anything what we're currently getting, just what future development, the incentives off future development. But you would start getting that new investment in 10 years. Some properties may get developed if you don't have this incentive, but I would say a vast majority that haven't been developed so far probably won't be. But again, it has to be for housing. And most of your urban renewal areas are not in residential districts.
Right.
They're in your business districts. Unless you get housing in your business districts, but that's not a bad thing. That's a great thing.
Stephanie, this was a great PowerPoint presentation. Is there a way that you could give a copy to Roger so that we could have one for our records?
We have it.
Oh, great, thank you so much.
So, is it the consensus of the council to move forward on this?
Yes.
Yeah.
Everyone, Sarah?
I have some hesitations for sure, but I'm interested in learning more.
Okay. All
Sounds
right.
good. Then we'll do,
Carmen has his
Carmen?
hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in. I'm at this point in time with limited research, pretty in favor of this just because of building costs and the approach to building new structures can be cost prohibitive, and anything we can do to incentivize housing, which this is solely for housing, really makes a lot of sense to me. We just need to get more stock out there, and I'm hoping that we can help in some way, and this feels like one avenue. I'm interested to hear, Sarah, what your hesitations are and concerns, because I think you have a valuable outlook on housing and the needs that we have being met. But I'm definitely open for more research and discussion, but I'd like to move forward with at least the research portion.
I'm just not in the business of helping rich people get richer, really, at the end of the day. Like, if this is about housing and supporting people that are low income and trying to access rentals, like we saw what happened on Watson. And $1,900 a month is not affordable. And I don't think that, I think we've seen that the trickle-down theory doesn't work in practice. And we do have a huge number of people trying to move into our community. So we do need more housing development. But if the goal is to help support our low-income renters, I'm not sure that this gets at that.
I just think that somebody isn't gonna be in a business though, if they're not gonna make some money. I mean, I couldn't do my business if I was losing. And so if this helps incentivize it, and like Carmen said, I think the research is important just so that we have more information.
Agree.
And when we attended the league, I mean, this was what, 3 years ago?
I
3
think it was
years
longer
ago.
than that.
Yeah, maybe 4. People were already getting on board with incentives and pushing to get things going because, we saw what in other areas where they were having these crises already, and we're there, so.
I'm not saying that I don't think that we need
No,
affordable
I
housing.
know.
I just don't know that we need to incentivize private developers in this way without something like a rent control or a consideration to actually help meet the needs of our low-income families.
So for clarification, Roger, Timber Cove was mentioned. Now, would they qualify for this?
No.
And so it has to be a multifamily unit. And so I think
Correct.
that's part of the, Sarah, I think that will be help with the balance. It can't just be these individual developers coming out and building a housing development. Timber Cove is not going, unless they change their methodology and going to a apartment complex or a multifamily facility with duplexes and triplexes and that. So I think that will help with the rent, and I think that can help keep, maybe get to that faction that you're talking about. And then there's some other ways that the city can partner with some developers out there that do low-income housing or moderate-income housing that, like we did with Inglewood. I think there's some things that we can do to help balance that, and I think that we should, definitely,
I also visited Portland recently, and if you haven't been there lately, I mean, it is just condos everywhere.
Yep.
There's a lot of single-family homes being torn down and condos built, and it's changing the culture of that town. And I think that's a consideration that we should have as well.
Yeah, I was up in Beaverton for a while. If you go down there, there's many, many apartments.
Yeah, it's
There's
awful.
hundreds, if not thousands, and, it's helping the need, but those costs are still prohibitive. I mean, and I know what they were trying to do, but, I mean, because of the demand, it's hard for them to get ahead of it.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
And
I'm one of
just
those
to-
people that got into a starter home and planned to be there no more than 5 years. And I think my daughter just turned 27 and she wasn't born yet. So I'm one of those people that helped create a problem, because then that family home wasn't available for somebody that was looking for a first-time home. And we were gonna build. And at that time, costs were crazy to build, and so we just scrapped that idea. Said we can hang out here a little bit longer, and 5 years turned to 10, and, here it is. But if there are things available for people that are able to afford them, even in the moderate level, which is what I think we were trying to do on South Lawson, and then it creates an opportunity for a first-timer to get into a home. And I would have loved to have upgraded, but it's crazy now.
That is
It's
crazy.
crazy.
so I think at least the council, from what I can, the consensus is to bring it back with some more detail, and then at that time we can make a final decision.
Sounds good, and we'll make sure that we include models or options that do have some rent barriers on them.
Thank you, Roger.
Okay, any more discussion on this?
Thank you.
All right. Next item is the FOG program.
Does Carmen have his
And,
hand up again?
Who's going to handle this? Start with Jim. Go.
I'm just going to introduce Risha. She'll carry on where she left off back in November.
You were
Let
before
know
us
what
last
we've been
time,
up
right?
to.
Time flies.
So I'll read you the background a little bit. At the November 22nd, 2021 work session, I presented the findings from the public comment period regarding the FOG ordinance and the initial policy treatment survey results. Because there was a substantial number of businesses that did not currently have a FOG treatment device installed, council expressed concerns with implementing an ordinance requiring these devices because it could cause a financial burden on these establishments. In response to those concerns, council directed city staff to draft a policy to help fund the initial phosphate treatment device installation. The presented draft policy will fund 100% of the cost to install a phosphate treatment device to not exceed $7,500. The upfront cost will be covered by the owner and reimbursed by the city over the following 3 years if the device is correctly maintained. It is expected that this will cover the full
Why
this-
did you, oh, sorry. Why did you decide about, sorry, I can't talk, the 3 years? So that you would pay them back over 3 years. Was that budgetary or?
So that would be to help reduce the budget impacts that we could face that, one year span, $375,000 would be a large chunk of the normal operating budget. So
Okay.
we chose that we look at it in 3 years, it would be 105 to 125 each year.
I'm just thinking it from the business owner perspective. I don't know if we could swing 2 years, because then they, obviously would be paid back quicker and there would be more of an incentive to do this. I don't know what that looks like, Roger.
I think it's possible. It's just working with our rate consultant to make sure that we have our operational needs covered
Okay.
on that. The reality is, it's a great investment in the system, and we should see a reduced operational cost in the cleaning of lines and hopefully the longevity of lines after it's implemented.
Yeah, we haven't even calculated the cost on savings for operational parts on this, right? And the other thing this doesn't reflect is how they're maintaining the systems. And I would imagine at least 50% are not maintaining them, if not more, correctly, which is impacting us also.
I would say probably, close to 50%. They say they have them pumped out. The POP program is ensure that that's happening. And the other part of not giving them the full upfront cost would be to ensure that they are following the ordinance, because that's part of getting
Right.
following the ordinance. Because once it's set up and the normal practicing procedure, that it just continues.
So did this go out to the stores, the grocery stores and those places and the small?
Into churches, hospitals, schools, restaurants, manufacturing, because they can also produce solids. And those are the products.
Okay.
And the grocery stores are a little harder to get in touch with because they're corporations, so we have had to success.
Okay.
A little resistance.
Yeah. I agree with Lucinda. If there's some way that we can get to 2 years, I personally, if we can even get to pay for the upfront cost, because it's going to be difficult for some of these businesses, but I'm not sure financially how that's going to affect us. I would just, from my discussion last time, on how much time is being spent on this and cleaning the lines and stuff, I think it would be reduced considerably. I forget who the lady we had for us in Orange County, the kind of a consultant. She was telling us how much it was reduced in their operational cost and cleaning the lines, and it was significant. So anyway, I just think we need to keep that in mind if we can get there, but I'm not sure. I'm always pushing Nicole, and so anyway.
So I think we can bring you both scenarios, but at the end of the day, it's really a council choice.
Yeah.
And staff will work it out.
No, this is great, and I'm excited to see this moving forward. I think it's going to make a big difference and help out. Our next agenda item is talking about wastewater treatment plant, and we're looking at another $1 million something for design and $17 million over costs in redevelopment of that facility. So these are the type of things that maybe we had to get some longevity in. So, Carmen, you have any comments?
Oh, I did, but I just, I think I clarified my own. It was basically in respect to the cleaning and maintenance and, the 3-year payback being kind of a way to monitor their cleaning and maintenance. But part of the ordinance requires that they must use a professional pumping company to maintain their pretreatment devices and report that. So, it's already built into the ordinance. So, I would like to see the payment come back at a quicker rate to the business owners, just because it is, it is a cost, and for some people, for some businesses, this might be, very overwhelming. And so, I'd like to just minimize that worry as much as possible.
What about, when we consider this, the most recent reference I have is a medical procedure. We're trying to take care of an issue that's, you know, has long-term effects. What if we had a program in there where if a very small operation can apply up front and say, look, I want to make this happen, but these are my budgetary constraints, and can we look at, would you look at possibly reimbursing me up front for this? Is that a layer we could put in there? Much like the hospital does or the clinics do, if you have a procedure that's gonna cost a lot more, you maybe can apply just to have it done. I don't know if that is too complex, but I could see.
I'm getting a nod, yes, from the
Didn't I
back
read in
row.
there that that's already in the policy? That there's certain cases where they may be reimbursed in full up front.
The director has the decision
Yeah.
Discretion, okay.
decide if it changes.
And as far as making sure they maintain it also, I thought we discussed that we would tie this to their business license to make sure they maintain and having it maintained by proving or showing us that it's been done. One of the issues that I had was I didn't want the staff having to go out and inspect these to make sure that they're being done. They should be tied to a business having to come in and clean them and send us the information. I really don't want to put more of a burden on the staff if we can avoid it, and I think we can. So I think they have to provide us with someone that cleans it, because that person cleaning it will also know how often it needs to be cleaned, whether it's going to be every 2 months, twice a year, yearly. Depends on the volume they're doing. It's going to determine on how they need to be taken care of.
So,
The program to that, how to tie it to the business.
Yeah, and I think, again, it was brought up, this is what they were doing in Orange County. It seemed to work real well, so. But if staff has to go out and check these, it's going to be a burden, I believe. So I think we just put it on them, and there's going to be certain people that we should suggest that they can utilize. Roto-Rooter, and I imagine there's 3 or 4 in the area that can do this. And maybe this will even start another business that would get involved, start doing it, so.
so just to clarify, if I read the ordinance correctly, existing dischargers that don't have a pre-treatment device, they're not required to get one unless there's changes in their operation, correct?
Yes, and this, so that's what this policy kind of overrides that, to bring, since it would be funding the option for them to the device, then that would be different. It would just be, the ordinance would stay the same for years to come, and then the policy would just be for a shorter amount of time to get everyone up to the same playing field.
So an existing restaurant that doesn't have a treatment device in, doesn't have to put one in.
Well, the policy says that they do.
Okay,
So the ordinance for many years to come says they don't, but the policy kind of overrides the ordinance and says, yes, we do, but we're also going to help fund it for you.
right.
So that way you can do this without costing. If that's,
So they do, so an existing restaurant that doesn't have one, we implement this, and if they don't want to put one in, they don't have to, or they do?
they do.
Okay,
And then there would be the enforcement process. But if you're paying for it,
we're offsetting it by going ahead and paying for a grease, or a facility, or to take care of it, a grease trap.
I think that helps persuade them.
No, I agree, I totally agree. I think it's a good idea.
I like using incentive over a hammer.
No, absolutely.
But in the case that you have to do the enforcement,
Yeah.
it lists a couple of enforcement codes. What does that look like?
This is our normal enforcement code for
Okay.
our sanitary sewer, also, they, the location, and there's mitigation to try, take steps.
I think
So
that,
they'll enforce.
isn't the big enforcement part, they won't be renewed their business license to operate in the city of Coos Bay? Yeah,
Yeah, and if they're a restaurant and they provide alcohol and you let OLCC know that they don't have a business license, that impacts their OLCC license. There's plenty of reasons for them to want to do this. That may not be the same case with a church, though. That doesn't need an OLCC license.
But everyone that you talked to was on board with this and ready to go, right?
I would say most of them, if there would be a funding portion that they understand, they don't
great. And you're right, a lot of people don't realize it. I had one restaurateur I was in, and he handed me his application and said, I'm on board. So I brought it in, turned it in for him. I guess that's how he thought it was supposed to happen, but anyway. Thank you so much. It's good to see you again, and thank you for the great report and the survey that you did.
Thank you.
So council, any other comments or questions before we proceed further on, coming back to the council? Anyone? Okay. Next item is the water treatment plant 1. It says Jim, and I'm sure you're going to turn it over to somebody else, right?
Yes, sir, it's gonna be Stefan.
Okay.
He's the expert tonight on this.
Good evening. So July of 2021, Jacobs Engineering presented to council the final proposed scope for the first phase of the wastewater treatment plant 1 upgrades. This upgrade includes a new secondary clarifier, new chlorine contact basin, upgraded chlorine distribution system, upgrades to the electrical and control systems, and an upgraded water system. The total estimated cost for these upgrades was presented by Jacobs Engineering to be $17.2 million in 2023 dollars. Council agreed that this was the correct direction. With approval to proceed, city staff submitted the final draft of the Plant 1 pre-design report to the Department of Environmental Quality, DEQ, for review, comment, and approval. In December, DEQ granted approval to proceed with the design. City staff then requested Jacobs Engineering to prepare a design scope and the level of effort required to complete the design. The final design scope includes the design of a new secondary clarifier, new chlorine contact basin, upgraded chlorine distribution system, upgrades to the electrical and control systems, and upgraded water system. And the level of effort is $1.12 million. So to do that, it will increase our loan amount that we're currently working on by about $700,000. The previous loan was for $1.2 million. The pre-design was about $800,000. So the kind of difference is about $700,000. Loan will, with council's direction, we'll ask for that through DEQ to be increased.
So you're looking for the council at the council meeting to go ahead and adopt this and move forward on it?
Yeah, and just bringing it to you ahead of time before, if there's any questions or anything else that wants to be looked into, before we're looking for a decision on it.
Okay. So I know you're new to this, Sarah. I don't know if you want a little bit more detail on how we got here or why we're doing it, or?
I did read that really exciting multi-page report that you included, so thank you.
All right.
You missed the 237-page report that I got to read.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Didn't we have 2 of them?
Yeah, well, we had,
One was 147.
I think that was plant 2 that we're in the middle of.
So it looks like construction will be started in the first half of 2023, is that correct?
Yeah.
Any other questions?
So I think the mayor's brought this topic up before, but, and we've talked to Roger about moving the dump station, the RV dump station where it's at, over closer to the treatment plant. Is that something that can be included in this project, or would that be separate?
So per what DEQ has approved, that's not included in that proposal.
That's correct. Although part of the Front Street Blueprint Plan, one of the, well, I'll call it the early win action items, I think that's what the terminology we heard this morning. That's one of the tasks to evaluate moving the dump station. So that would be a separate project. Funding-wise, I mean, there's different options. And one of those options could be using urban renewal funds to have that moved, instead of having to put it on an increased project and add that to user rates. But that's something that's actually on the list, and I believe it's going back to, at the end of the month, to the committee for consideration, and then back to the council for adoption by June, I believe. But that is on one of the lists that we talked about this morning.
Roger, I feel like we need a marketing campaign for this because of the user rates. I mean, in all honesty, just like getting ahead of this, and making sure that people understand why we need to do this and the fact that the rates are going to go up, and something to consider.
I think so. We're very fortunate that the councils of the past realized more than probably 15 years ago that there was a huge amount of infrastructure improvements that needed to happen with this 100-year-old utility that needed to occur. And they set out on a path of knowing that we would have to increase rates at an average of 6.5% a year in order to be able to handle the needed improvements and the debt service that would be required to undertake those. And so throughout the plan, it was planned out that certain things would happen at certain times so that we could keep those rates somewhat steady and not have to face what occurred. And I want to say it's in 2003, 2004, where there was 2 years where there were double-digit increases of 20 and 25% in the rates because rates weren't going up, but costs to operate the utility were. But a marketing campaign is important. I know that some work was done in the past, but that's long forgotten. And people only remember what was recently before them.
So that rate increase, the analysis and the economic person that we have that figured this in, right? At the rate we're going.
Yes, and it's actually an every year process. We continue because the landscape changes and some projects come on and there may be some new projects and maybe what wasn't critical now becomes critical. And so new things are going on. And plus we changed our model a little bit where we're setting aside, I think it's $2 million a year or more to take care of those unplanned projects or those emergencies that come up. But every one of those projects you undertake actually helps with your what they call I&I or inflow and infiltration. And the more that we can cure that, the less amount of groundwater that's going to the plants to be treated.
Which means less cost to build and maintain. Yeah, but I think, so marketing it and making sure people understand it is important though, because I don't think wastewater is always someone that everyone's interested in, right? Yeah. Well, thank you. Any other questions? Carmen, do you have a comment?
I would just say that I'm all in favor of a marketing campaign. Maybe even we do a city council special meeting where we walk through and show just what happens behind the scenes when you flush the toilet or turn on the water. It's an extremely complex system, and that's, the wastewater treatment plants are only a portion of it. There's everything underneath the ground that needs to be maintained on a constant basis. And, it's pretty amazing how we're able to, keep everybody healthy and safe and keep the water clean. But it comes at a cost. And I think it's something that, personally, I am fine with paying, but, justifying those rates is something I think we really got to sell to the people. And I think it's easily done if people just understand the mechanics behind things. So fully in favor of the marketing campaign.
Okay. Maybe we need to have a public barbecue in there. Your business with everyone. I know when I've been. So, and when I told my wife, let's go to a barbecue at the wastewater, she goes, what? And so we went down there. But it's eye-opening and it is interesting. And so, anyway, however you want to market it, I'm behind. So, thank you so much. Appreciate the report and all the work you do. Okay, next item is budget philosophy. Wow. we get to decide, Nicole, for upcoming urban renewal agency budget regarding Front Street Blueprint. So Roger and Nicole, I believe we're handling this.
Yeah, I can start off with this one. So, we've had a fairly status quo method of doing our budget philosophy. There's certain projects that we undertake every year that's approved by the agency. There's a certain amount of money that's set aside, and in the last few years, more money set aside for the business improvement grants. But you are coming up close to completing a much desired Front Street improvement blueprint. And I believe it might be the right time to maybe take a different philosophy, and instead of putting, let's say, $750,000 into the business improvement grant program, maybe redirect and leave $250,000, which is more than what was done previous to this council on an annual basis, but maybe directing $500,000 to begin working on the implementing Front Street Blueprint initiatives. We're not saying which projects would be improved or which would be undertaken. That would be the agency that would make those decisions. We're just saying, at least as we build the budget, which we need to do right now, maybe we look at putting that money down there so that we can undertake those projects. And that would only just be a catalyst to what's happening right now on Front Street with not only the private investment on above the museum, north of the museum, but also the private investment that's happening south of the museum. And therefore, we wouldn't be just doing one more study that would get placed on a shelf. You're actually implementing those decisions that are being undertaken. And those are decisions that started in 1996.
Jeez.
Roger, would it, since this is in preparation of the budget, I know Joe and I are more intimate with the details because we sit on that committee.
Correct.
Is there an opportunity to get, some of the information, I know we don't have a final report yet, to the rest of the counselors, to be able, to see just what a tremendous impact, updating Front Street and doing some of those infrastructure projects and, I can't talk tonight, I apologize, would be beneficial.
No, I certainly understand where you're going with this, and I think we could, without a doubt, provide additional information. In fact, I think there is a link on our homepage with the most current documents on there. Considerable amount of work that's been undertaken for this plan. Again, it won't be completed till June. If we were to set, let's say, $500,000 aside for that, we don't have to call out the projects. We just have it in one category, and then once the recommendations come from the Blueprint Committee to the agency, then it will be the agency that decides, okay, which near-term project could we start with? There'll be a menu of options for you to consider.
What percentage of the budget is 500,000?
I'm going to dial a friend here.
So this year's that we're currently in for downtown is 4.4 million, so 500 is
A little less
not
than,
all that much.
about 10%,
Yeah.
a little bit more than 10%.
Okay, it's less than that.
And the agent, now the urban renewal budget's going to go up. I mean, so part of it this, 2023, isn't that when Coos Bay Village comes on, part of it comes on?
We should be seeing that as they're built and assessed. We should start seeing that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it'll continue to come on board more, right? Okay.
And I know this council will be shocked about what I'm about to say, but I'm super supportive of this because, we talk about projects and then they take forever, right, to happen. And this is an opportunity actually to get some meaningful work done in that district, which will drive more economic development, hopefully more businesses coming, and really a place for our citizens to, enjoy. And it's part of the downtown corridor, so I think it would ties in well with the downtown. Stephanie, I have lost it. Your business.
Coos Bay Downtown
Thank you, Coos Bay Downtown Association. So I didn't have enough coffee today. So I think that it would be so nice to actually start a project and see meaningful work done in a short period of time, and it's not down the road, another council has to decide, and then it never happens.
And I can tell you that one of the people that sit on this committee has also invested in another piece of property down there for development because of this and because of what we're doing on Front Street. So I think it's exciting because I was told that they were concerned that some discussion that was going on, talk about that would happen there potentially would change what would happen. So they decided to step up and purchase a piece of property, and they're going to be redeveloping it. So it's great. So, I mean, you're right. I agree with Cindy. You know, some of these, just like we did with the TOUGH program, we found a way to be creative and make sure that immediately, we went ahead and started maintaining the streets, and people saw a benefit from it. So I think it's important to show the public that you know, their dollars are being used in a positive way.
I think some of that has been visible, but not in that particular street area.
Right.
I don't know. I think what we have had some action down there. We have had money going into the Front Street area, so
Right.
it's not as though nothing has been invested there.
No, that's true.
Put quite a bit of money in there.
No,
But we want more, Stephanie.
Lucinda, you know, she is, right?
And I wouldn't want to paint the picture that if you don't set this money aside, that nothing will happen there, because you do have some planned projects down there already with secured funding, and that is updating Alder, Birch, and Cedar in between 101 in front. And then you also have the Front Street parking lot, those projects, but you'd make a bigger impact if you put more resources down there. And I really just think that those will pay dividends with what's happening down there already. And that's in addition to, you had already set aside in the budget, through this year's budget process, an amount of money to undertake extending the walkway from Coos Bay Village through the backside of the museum. And we're going to move forward with that discussion with the museum and bring you back a proposal to move that forward as well.
Do you just need consensus, Roger?
Just need consensus.
Well, plus, this still has to be approved by the Budget Committee, correct?
Correct.
So-
We just wanted to bring a package that met some desires of the council or agency, at least at a starting point, and that makes it an easier discussion for the Budget Committee to go through.
Right.
Well, it makes sense to me, but I will comment, did you say the Front Street blueprint started in '96?
Mhm.
Well, it started out as the Front Street Master Plan in 1996, and then that set apart a number of things in action that actually did take place, such as the creation of the Waterfront Heritage Zone and some zoning rules to comply with that Front Street Master Plan. In addition, you had other projects that took place under there, like the Tug Irene project that went in. That was one of the amenities that was down there. And other things. And then, you know, things kicked back up, and there was a lot that happened between then and 2017, but the Front Street action plan, we went through a planning process with funding we received from a Brownfield grant in 2017 when Tom Dixon was our planning administrator. And that kind of updated that and said, okay, what's the next things that need to happen? It identified the same issues in order to move it along. And then we've taken from the Front Street action plan and went to a blueprint. Okay, how do we implement now? So
Yeah, we got a grant from ODOT to do that.
that's correct.
I guess my point is, it's been in the works for around 26 years, and I would just like to see some similar effort made to the Empire District, because I really think that it deserves the same attention.
Well, I still think we have the master plan to talk about Empire. That didn't, it's not entirely off the table, so,
It's right at the edge. but
yes, I
we're
had to
working
get
on
there,
it.
zing.
We're working on it. I think Carmen has his hand up.
Oh, Carmen?
Yeah, I'm still here. Yeah, I just kind of wanted to chime in. I think that trying to get this master plan over the goal line, or start really working on it here, is going to need some resources. And I think 26 years later, or whatever, however many years it's been, is probably an adequate amount of time being passed that we can start to really leverage a little bit more funding that way. I did have a question. Joe and Lucinda, you guys said that you were on a committee. Is this a Front Street committee? Which committee are you talking about?
Go ahead, Joe.
So this is the committee that was formed to, with some property owners down there and business owners to look at the Front Street. And this is ODOT got a fund for, I think, a grant for $150,000
I think you're correct.
for David Evans, who was awarded the grant monies to come up with a design. And that's been in, we've had, I don't know how many meetings, probably 4 or 5. And we're going to have another one in March. We'll make sure if you want to attend, to go over that with the property owners again and change the designs and the discussions we have. So,
And I think this council actually approved for us to be on that committee, if I
That's
remember
correct.
correctly.
yeah, yes. So anyway, that's what the
Okay.
committee is. It's met with David Evans, and Carolyn's been involved heavily on it, and the committee, and we've gone over some feelings and designs and questions. And then the thing that was lacking was meeting with the property owners, and we've done that twice so far, and there'll be another time here in March. So for them to understand
definitely
how it's going to proceed.
I'd love to be a part of it if at all possible. I mean, just as informative.
Sure.
I just get a lot of people asking questions, and so
Okay.
it'd be nice to be kind of informed and up to date.
Yeah, we have, like I said, we're having a meeting here in the council chambers in March, and I'll make sure you get the notification on the time and date.
I do think Councilor Miles brings up a good point, that
Yep.
we do need to stay focused on Empire. So,
And I don't think we need, I really don't want to forget downtown too. We're starting to see some businesses off the 101 that are looking at taking advantage of some of those funds. And of course, you got to bring up Phil's point that we have a lot of parking lots and issues down there. And, I just don't want to throw all of our focus in one direction. And I agree with Councilor Miles. We have an active group out there. I say it every time. And I think that we need to give it the attention in Empire that it deserves.
I agree, but 10% is actually quite small when you look at the whole picture, so, and I still think we need to have some sort of master plan for Empire, but that can be a discussion for another day.
Will the master plan take 26 years to implement?
Huh? No,
Well,
no,
there's
because
been a
I
master
don't
plan
think
out.
I'll be around.
I mean, if you go through and look what we've accomplished in Empire, it's been significant. But, I mean, there's still more that needs to be done. We just redid the renewal agency out there to create more funds for it. Unfortunately, the Hollering Place has just not been something that we've been successful in finding a developer or a partner to get that done. We got part of it done, but, I think it's an important part that and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Rob, and Stephanie and Lucinda, that the Empire Association and group out there really would like to see that developed. They believe that would be a helpful tool for them and their businesses and entities out there. So maybe we need to take another stab at trying to find someone to locate there, go out for an RFP or something. I don't know.
well, and I will say, I was on, prior to council, the action committee for the Front Street. And I know there's been a lot of work for a number of years, but it seemed like that action plan really was the impetus to go after and get this grant for, the
Correct.
transportation plan. So it really has been a shorter period of time. So to answer your question, no, not 26 years for a master plan for Empire.
And hopefully, nothing should take that long.
Yeah.
But I can tell you that, it's because this council, we only talk about the last 5 years, so that's what we look at.
Well, I think I've heard from people that have left, come back to the area, visited, folks that have lived here that tell us all the time that they see these positive things happening, and It's because of these programs being implement, kind of championed through by a variety of people, but also this council making sure we move forward. So I appreciate that Rob brings that up.
No, it's true. And I think that was important that, one of the, there's other reasons, but one of the main reasons for the library being out there, we wanted it out in Empire because we felt truthfully it would be a benefit and help. Unfortunately, it didn't go in the location everyone wanted to go in, which is the old Gussie's, and I think we're all on board with that. I think that'll be something that we're going to be addressing, though, as an agency, because, in fact, I think they've been notified, and isn't that being dealt with, Roger?
It is, and we can provide you an update on the enforcement activities.
Yeah. So that's something that I think we need to keep in mind, and some urban renewal grants funds could probably help facilitate that project, whatever it may be. Good discussions, guys.
So did we give Roger what he wants? I mean, or
In a roundabout way.
do we have consensus?
I took it as consensus.
Roger's very good, intuitive, deciphering our comments, yes. Anything else on this? Anything else, council, that you want to?
Yeah, I have a comment. Tomorrow from 2 to 4 and 6 to 8 here in council chambers, the library design consultants will be having public meetings to preview the options of the final concept designs. So
yeah.
Here in council chambers tomorrow, there's 2 meetings, one 2 to 4 and one 6 to 8.
And it's really important that we try to get this out as much as possible. I just had a discussion, weird spot. I was at the gym in a class and a guy asked me about it, right? But he didn't really understand, why we would put it out there, and is this what we really need? And so the more we can get this information out, and fortunately, I've been able to go to the meetings and get the information, so I was able to pass along that information. But we need to do that, market it however we can, to make sure that the public understands the need. And again, I think besides the library, that, it was talked about, well, the amount of books that are there are never going to change. Well, that's not quite true. And also a meeting place. And the other thing I think they need to understand is, and I relate this to them, it's no different than a school being, like the school bond passing and what they did for the school. Same thing. This is an economic development tool that, people and families won't come and locate here without these type of things in place. And it's important that we pass that along and make sure they understand it. It really is important, so.
Yeah, I agree with that because, I think people are looking at the increased tax to them personally, but what does that do to increase the value of their home or the value of the neighborhood also? And talking about some of those ancillary things I think would be really helpful.
And more homes that are built, and more homes that are bought, and more homes that are developed spreads that tax base out, so it costs all of us less. And so the more that we can get that to happen, and these are attractions and things that I believe bring people in. So,
I think we also still need to do some work on overcoming the objection with it in the park associated with the home unhoused. So I still think that is something that I don't know if Rob, I put this back on you, maybe the committee can consider, but that seems to be the thing that I'm talking about a lot with people. And how do we overcome that objection?
it's true, but we've had this discussion, and I asked the same gentleman, because that came up, I said, have you been out there lately? Because I just walked there last weekend. It was great. I mean, people don't go out there and realize, and there was a lot of people out there, it's a great park, a great facility, and this will just enhance it, so.
I don't think people realize what our staff has done to clean up the underbrush in just a few months, and enforcement and all of that. I think they're remembering a picture, but I do monitor the media, especially the comments on media when I see anything about the library, because I think those are the areas where we can focus on, and clearly there's a pattern developing. And I have shared that meeting on those sites. They made a nice little graphic. If you could go, Sammy, is that on the library's
Yes, it is.
site?
Well, yeah, the information is on the library calendar. We also have Zoom links. If people can't attend live, they can do it, online too.
So if you have a social media page, if you can share that information with your folks, because it's all over the place. I mean, it might be a friend who maybe doesn't understand it on your social media, and just share as much as possible to help spread that word. And I know that the committee is working diligently to try to put together talking points for that, because there's a lot of misinformation out there, because people are just going by what they remember. But there is a good picture of what happens when you develop. I believe it was a downtown association person that told me one time they asked they asked another city why they don't have people sitting on their benches. This has been a very long time ago. Gathering in certain locations. And they said, because we're present, there's a lot of activity that is happening there. And activity, although everyone, and I mean everyone should be able to use a public library, activity can deter some of those things that are negative, that are associated, whether or not it's a regular patron or someone who is announced, that's just looking to warm up and have a comfortable place to sit. So I think, it will serve a good purpose across the board for all of the things that we have. But share that graphic and tell your friends. I know it's short notice, but a lot of those questions can be answered there.
And I would share that I know that the foundation through a political action committee, it will be doing education on this, and they've been waiting for the measure to get a ballot number. It received a ballot number today. So I think you're going to see a lot of information coming across in public education.
That's great.
All right, anything else, anyone? Great discussion, great meeting. Thank you so much, everyone. And, okay, the work session is adjourned. Thanks. Here's some information.